All your games belong to us.
Hey guys, welcome back to our Chrono Trigger Let's Play here at Port 3 Games. I'm joined once again by Hillbeast, master of destruction and fucking up every game he's ever played.
Yeah, especially the shitty ones.
I do apologize for these few recordings here. During this recording session, my mouse was actually in the shot. Normally, I have a thing that removes my mouse, but I forgot to check it, and re-rendering it would have taken, you know, donkeys, so...
Yeah. So we're gonna have to just put up with it. Just look away from it. It's
ignore
only
that.
in the corner.
Ignore it. So, for those of you who are joining us from last time, who need a brief recap, we've just come across a grandfather paradox because Marl has pretty much caused herself to not exist in the past. So we have to go save the princess or the queen, so that way she exists again for whatever reason.
Yeah. Now, normally you're supposed to go to the town and check out all the hints and all that sort of thing to figure out where she might have gone and who might have kidnapped her. Obviously, it was one of these people that they were against a war against who's gone and done it. So it's not too hard, just beating up a few more dicks and get yourself some more experience and stuff like that.
To me, I kind of felt that it was pretty straightforward because there was the place that I had to, and you'll see here in a couple of minutes here when I head there, it just kind of felt like, you know, that place just kind of seemed a little bit different to where you just would want to go there.
Yeah, you hardly have to do any hunting. Like, even if you were just talking to people in town when you arrived here, you would have picked up a few hints about a cathedral, so that's obviously where you're going to have to go, to a cathedral somewhere. And it's pretty easy to see the cathedrals just off to the side. Which is kind of stupid, really, because, you know, if you're kidnapping someone, why would you not take them very far? Wouldn't you want to get them as far away as possible so people wouldn't be able to find them really easily?
Well, it is possible that they just stopped trying to hide them any further when they thought Queen Leene had been returned because Marl was there. So maybe they just, you know, decided, oh well, balls to it, we're not going any farther than that now. The Rolly Riders, they need, like, the enemies at the beginning of the game had some weird names. Yeah. I actually had done some research though, and if you're playing the Nintendo DS version of the game, a lot of the enemies and items have different names. Well, they're translated a little bit differently to where they're more modernized. So apparently the DS eliminates a lot of like the weird named enemies and such.
Which is kind of sad. 'Cause I've grown attached to these rollies and rollies.
Yeah. So pretty much almost all the weapons have different names. Like they have very similar names. It's just they change them to make them sound a little bit more modern. Like the Rainbow Edge is simply called the Rainbow. But they're just minor differences. There are a few of dialogue changes in the Nintendo DS version of the game because they changed some translations that were apparently bad translations to make it make more sense.
Yeah. There are a few lines in this game which don't quite make sense, but the thing is, apparently the translation team was really small and they really had hardly any time to work on it, so they said if they had had a bit more time then it would have been better, but, you know, it's kind of sad that a good game like this didn't get enough time to get translated properly.
This was more of actually one of the filler games that Square Enix had made at the time. Square Enix kind of pumped this game out as an in-between game for Final Fantasy, but they didn't expect it to become as popular as it did. But surprises come in many different sizes. But this game kind of definitely.
When Luca gets out of bed, she has no hat, and then suddenly it appears on her head.
Yeah, I think that's the only time we actually get to see Luca's hair. Unless, of course, you're playing the PlayStation version of the game where you can see some of the animated cutscenes. Or the DS version, which has them as well. Still no proper 3D remake of this game, and I'm a little saddened by that. Because, well, there was a group of fans that were going to make a 3D remake of this game, but Square Enix gave them a cease and desist order, so they had to kind of, you know, end it. But they stated that they were actually very happy that Square Enix sent them that. That meant that they were still interested in this game. Which, later on after that, they made a Nintendo DS remake. Which, it was an okay remake. They did add a few new things and stuff. You know, they definitely kind of revamped the game a little bit. But all in all, I kind of felt that a 3D remake or a graphical remaster would have been nice.
Yeah, this game definitely is a game that deserves a remake. Like, you get all these things like Final Fantasy VII being remade and all that sort of thing, and all these other games which keep on getting remade, but you never see, like, Chrono Trigger. Never gets anything special for it, and it really does deserve a remake, because it really is a very good game.
I think there's something that we should definitely talk about while we're on the subject of the whole Chrono Trigger thing, and something that happened earlier. We're kind of backtracking here, but at the beginning of the game here, the whole grandfather paradox thing that was just created by this moment. You'll find that later on we're gonna discuss that again, because it there's kind of something important related to it later on in the game. I don't want to spoil it now, but just kind of giving people a little bit of a heads up that because this game talks about time travel, be prepared for some very complicated explanations as to how some stuff works.
It starts getting real complex later on in the game.
Yeah, this was an extremely complex game for the Super Nintendo age, because remember, story designing back then, without as many visual elements as they did, the story out designing, they tried to keep story designing very, very minimal, because otherwise they didn't want the player to have to use their imagination too much. Because since you have that visual aspect when you're making a game, leaving too much up to the player's imagination can kind of make it so the game's not as enjoyable. This is the introduction of Frog, one of my favorite characters actually in this whole game. Possibly one of the best.
He's a very good character to have, and he's quite entertaining as well to have around.
Yep, right from the Middle Ages there, Frog. Now
Frog
has some, he has some backstory to him, which we'll go over later.
Yeah.
But I like how Frog is like the only person that actually talks like he's from Middle Ages, despite the fact that there's tons of people around here. Did you notice that?
Yeah, I noticed that. He was the only one who talked with, like, King James sort of script.
Yeah, he talks like a very stereotypical Middle Ages, but yet nobody else does. So maybe it's just because it's just him. Maybe he's like a Renaissance fair person or something.
Maybe he's just very polite.
Still, his weapon being the broadsword, which works very nicely with Chrono's katana, which Chrono obviously being the speed and power character, him obviously being the powerhouse character, where his character is more about getting those critical hits and just wailing away with that massive blade. To be honest, I always use Frog for pretty much a majority of the game. Like, whenever I can use him, I stick him right in my party, because there's no reason not to, because he gets such good critical hit rates.
Him, Chrono, and one other character later on that you'll meet, they're usually the best people to have in your final party.
I will admit, though, his character portraits, Frog's character portrait's really creepy. Like, I can't help but think it's really freaking creepy. But then again, once again, drawn in that Dragon Ball Z style, even with animal-type characters, so it's kind of interesting.
You can really see Dragon Ball Z's character design flowing through. Like, Chrono definitely looks like Goku.
Yeah, Goku and Chrono may obviously be based off of each other, because considering, the drawing style. But, I mean, I like kind of how all the characters have a very similar feel to them, how they kind of feel like they go together. Like, this is obviously the most odd party, like, because the game takes place over several periods of time, you have obviously one of the most odd party setups in any game ever. Like, you have a character from the future, a character from the past, a character from the present, and it just creates a very odd characters for parties. But it's what keeps the game interesting, really, is the fact that your characters are so different.
Yeah, they like the discussions that they can have together. They can start to get quite good.
If I recall, there are dialogue changes depending on what characters you're using, though most of which minor.
As well, like if you bring a certain character to a certain place at a certain time, then obviously something different will happen. And the other thing which you'll see later on is if you introduce the characters to your mum. Like, you bring them to Chrono's mum's place, and you bring them back, and she's always got something interesting to say. Like, especially about Frog, she's got quite amusing stuff to say.
Now, this part, like I said, we're just kind of going through the cathedral here, trying to get to the queen. obviously get into looking at some of the enemies here. Interestingly enough, there actually was a pre-release version of this game before it came out. This is one of the first instances in kind of game history where a pre-release version of a game got leaked. And most of the game was finished, however they put roadblocks up at several points because they were still working on some parts. And you can still find ROMs of that game. Oh, this part, they all think that you're in disguise.
Yeah.
But you can still find runs of that game, but the only way to really get around is using cheat codes or the epoch glitch that's in it, apparently. Because there's a glitch apparently where you can just use the epoch to get around and stuff. But other than that, the only thing that's really interesting about it is the fact that there's a lot of slight differences, things that they changed before the final game. Even and there's a couple of sprites for certain characters they never used.
Oh,
but
it's not really them. They're actually
it was a trap.
Peoples.
It was a trap.
That's the thing, is this game actually does do a lot of traps. Like, later on, you get to a place, and you find, like, a save point. You're like, oh, yes, I can finally save my game. And then it turns into a monster.
You gotta love that. But most people who are familiar with Square Enix, who have played some of their games before, you're probably used to these traps at this point. Like, such as in some of their games, like, you go to a chest, and the chest turns out to be like a mimic, and you gotta go fight it then. And they usually have, like, a crap ton of HP.
Yeah. Like, there's, like, certain parts where there's, like, 3 save points. You gotta choose one of them. Like, if you choose the wrong one, then it'll take you away, and you never got to save your game, so you gotta go and fight the boss, and you never got the chance to save or heal up or anything.
I kind of like how the bosses in this game, how Square, because this is back at time when it was pretty much all turn-based RPGs, so there wasn't much you could do. But I kind of like how Square just made it so that fighting bosses was not just them stacking lots of HP on them, so that it was impossible to kill them.
Yeah.
But instead making it so that there's actually some strategic elements involved in using the right characters and the right moves.
Yeah.
but
there'd be
studying your enemies.
Like you'd have to do certain magic combos after you've hit them or something like that. Like, they've all got their own techniques.
Yeah.
Like, earlier on in the game, like, the techniques to beat them is usually just beat the hell out of them until they drop. But later on, they start to get real tricky.
Yeah, and then you get some nice items here. Got a nice maiden suit. Got some ethers. The one thing I like about this game is they're not stingy with, like, the stuff to help you heal your magic. Because that, like, coming from games like Pokemon, where, like, you'd have, like, ethers to restore your power points, and it always pissed me off that they never sold them anywhere. Like, no matter what you did, they wouldn't sell them to you, so it's like you always had to ration them.
Yeah.
But I like how this, and a lot of games were like that, where they never sell you ethers. But I like how this game you can actually get your hands on them pretty easily, so it's nice.
Yeah, they never made this game too challenging for you. If there's someone out there who found this game hard, then they've clearly got no idea how to play games, because it's really not a hard game. It's not a simple game. It's not like you get through this and you're like, oh man, this is easy. No, it's not a simple game. It's just it's not a challenging game. Well, not too challenging.
It's a game that is challenging for the right reasons, really.
Yeah.
It's challenging in the sense that it's a motivating game.
Yeah.
You feel like you're rewarded as you go along.
You
feel that the rewards
you don't
are
feel
justified.
like they've gone and made it too hard on you, or they've gone and made something which is annoyingly complicated on you. No, it just feels like you just flow right through the game. Every now and then you might get a game over and you got to reload and you got to try again, but it's never really hard.
Yeah, I think I got like 3, but they might end up getting cut out just because people don't want it, because I don't want to show people having to do the same part over again. We're assuming that people want to just see the game start to finish here. Other weapons here, the steel saber.
And here we have more people who've been kidnapped by what's...
Though they don't really look too kidnapped. They're just kind of roaming around, and there's like no one really outside guarding them, so...
Well, there was those big spikes, which you had to disable.
Yeah. Okay, now, the power tabs, I kind of collect them. I don't really use them right away. I'm going to use them later.
Yeah, the power tabs
But
basically increase your power of your characters. They're always good to have. Like, you pick them up every now and then. They only put it up by 1, but that 1 always does help out.
And that concludes this video. Peace off.